Hello everyone, this is yours Trivia, and welcome back to another faction preview for Total War Warhammer 3, as we're covering Greasus Goatooth today. Now Greasus is a Ogre Kingdom faction, which means he's part of the pre-launch Ogre Kingdoms DLC, which players can receive for free as part of the pre-order bonus, or if you purchase the game within the first week of launch. And since we're on the topic of purchasing Total War Warhammer 3, I do have a link in the description below for my Nexus store, where you can purchase the game along with a variety of other games that are featured on the channel. And for those of you who are unaware, Nexus essentially sells games in terms of Steam code, which you can redeem on Steam like any regular game, but instead of letting Steam take a portion of the revenue, it shares that with me instead. So it's a great way to support the channel for a purchase that you were planning to make anyways. Now, of course, if you do have other avenues of purchasing the game at a discount, I do highly encourage you to take advantage of any sale you could find. But back to our faction preview. We will start by first taking a look at the Ogre Kingdom's shared mechanics in camps, meat, and contracts. Camps are unique settlements that can be deployed onto the campaign map by your armies to serve as a forward base for the Ogre Kingdoms. Each camp will come with their own buildings as well as a garrison, and you can deploy them on foreign territory, which can help you replenish and gain meat, which is a very necessary ingredient resource for the Ogre Kingdom armies, as it is part of the upkeep as well as a resource you can feed to the Great Maul and use for pre-battle feasts to give you boost in your armies. As for contracts, these are very similar to Mercenary Contract from Three Kingdoms, for those who are aware. Essentially, every 10 turns or so, your AI factions on the map will give you contracts that you can pick from, and you can take on targets, essentially, asking you to attack certain factions on the map. And by fulfilling these, you'll gain monetary resource gains as well as improved diplomatic standings with that faction. We'll take a look at each of these once we do hop into game. But for now, let's continue and take a look at Greasus Goatooth faction effects and lord effects. So first thing, we are the Over Tyrant. They are tyrants for each tribe of the Ogre Kingdoms, and we're sort of the tyrant of all tyrants. That is why we have diplomatic relations with all Ogre Kingdom factions of 20 points, increased income from trade of 25%, and all our units have increased 25% mass, which gives them better effective charge and collision damage. Most Ogre units are quite large. A large proportion of the entire roster are Ogres, which are monstrous infantry, so expect big mass numbers. We'll take a look at all the figures once we do our unit roster overview, which will come later today. As for the Lord effect, for Greasus' own army, we have increased income from raiding of 50%, minus 50% upkeep for Iron Gut units, and finally 50% increased income from sacking and looting settlements. And before we move on to maps and settings, we're going to take a look at the unit and spell browser and scan through all the units as we usually do to give everyone sort of a sneak peek of all the stats ahead of time if you want to pause and take a look at any of these. Of course, as I mentioned, we'll be doing a full roster overview later today, and it's going to be a big one. Because honestly, as a DLC faction, the Ogre Kingdoms is going to start out with one of the more complete rosters, and it's no surprise they actually have 23 different units available to them at the start, compared to, say, 14 units for the Nurgles and Tzeentch. And the reason for that is, for most of the launch faction with the base game, we're going to get DLCs, and they're going to get more units to flush out their roster. For Ogre Kingdoms, which is a DLC faction, although it's possible that we can get a DLC for a DLC, it's unlikely that will happen anytime soon. So they're going to have to live with this roster for quite a long time, I expect, and that's why it's slightly more complete compared to other factions. And that also means if a certain roster is, say, weak in multiplayer right now, it just means they'll get stronger, because they'll pick up DLCs and different types of units from them. Now, back to our map, we start out in the Mountain of Morn with the other Ogre Kingdom tribes. No surprise there. Grand Cathay is kind of to our, you want to say north, but technically they are to our east, because this is sort of the polar map, so north is like this way for everyone. So they're technically to our east. We can maintain a pretty good relationship with them if we want, because we can focus on trade. You can choose to maintain good relationship with other ogre kingdoms or just expand into them, which is fine because you don't have to get the increased income from trading with other ogre kingdoms. Feel free to confederate or dominate them through war. And then you can go raid on nearby factions, whether going east into Grand Cathay or going west into the Plain of Zar, which is pretty empty right now. So pretty ripe target to kind of expand there. And you can build your camp out strategically. Camps are very interesting, and we'll take a look at it once we do get into game. Now these are our settings, and with all that, let's start the campaign and actually see what the ogres want with Urson.
Ogres feast to honor Greasus the Over-Tyrant. Their appetites are ferocious. I must be wary.
Time's up, wizard.
No.
Put him in the stew.
Wait! Untold power can be harnessed from a dying god.
Power? Ogres take what they want. What more power do we need? Boil the pot! Fresh meat!
Please wait! The god is up there! You can't devour it!
Quiet! A bear, you say?
Sounds tasty.
Shut up! A new meat. God flesh.
Enough for you, your warriors, and your god, the Great Maw.
I can smell it now. Roast god ribs.
A feast like no other.
You're no meat eater. What's in it for you?
My book reveals a path to his deathbed. I will show you the way for one drop of Urson's divine blood.
One drop. But ogres get the rest.
That is the deal. Our goal is to claim Urson. The ogres will eat their weight in god flesh and throw the leftovers into the Great Maw.
I'm getting hungry, Yumi. Best start spitting out advice, or I'm gonna use your bones as toothpicks.
At once, Horde Master. The bear's roar has made the tribes restless. Other tyrants eye your mighty girth and are envious. The Cross Club's tribe plan to take your crown. Remind them who is the Over-Tyrant. Destroy them and subjugate any other tribe that dares to withhold tribute. The Firemouth is a sacred site. Claiming it by force or bribery is a powerful act and shall give you a base to expand westwards. Further south is the dwarf stronghold of Karak Azom. It should be cracked open and its riches added to your own. For we will require immense wealth if you are to hire the best ogres to invade the Chaos Realms. You will be busy, mighty trade lord, but the reward for your efforts is the god meat of Urson. Let the feast begin, for the Great Maw hungers.
Alrighty, so as we load into game here, we're going to talk about a couple of mechanics, and unlike most of our other previews, we'll actually go to turn 3, because we can't get access to camps before then, so it's kind of hard to explain them without seeing them. Now, we do have meat, which is our unique resource. This is given per army, so every army carries their own meat. It is consumed as part of the upkeep. So, for example, here you can see we have 10 units, therefore we'll consume 10 meat per turn. So that is pretty hefty. There are many ways to gain meat, so you don't have to worry too much about it. You can gain it from battle, from buildings, from characters, events, as well as different technologies. And you can also gain it from camp. You see the camp circle of influence. So setting up a camp is pretty important. Now this consumption We'll take a look at it a bit later. But for now, we can also use meat for another usage, and that's offerings to the Great Maul. And you can pay up to 10 meat for different bonuses for your army for the next 10 turns. So, melee attack plus 10, campaign range plus 20, global recruitment duration minus 2 turn to the minimum of 1 turn, so faster recruitment from the global recruitment slots, and wins a magic reserve plus 5 per turn. I don't recommend using this early on because meat is pretty precious, and you need to basically have some infrastructure to provide you the meat before you get these bonuses, nor do you need these early on because the opponents are quite weak. Now, aside from that, camp is a pretty important aspect, and we'll look at that once we can construct a camp. Currently we cannot. There's a limit to the number of camps you can have. You can gain more camp slots through technology as well as Greasus' skill tree, so that's kind of vital too. Then another mechanic is big names. This is actually quite fun. These are small objectives your lords can take on, and once they achieved a certain objective, they gain access to what's called a big name or a nickname for them that carries small bonuses that can sort of customize yourself, and you don't have to keep it. You can actually trade off big names as you complete more requirements and swap them, to your need. There is a cooldown period between switching, so you can't just swap them to your need instantly. You have to settle on one for a couple turns before swapping to a different one. Now, contract is something that we're not going to be able to showcase here because it's every 10 turns, starting on turn 10, so it'll take just way too long. Essentially, these are missions gifted by AI factions targeting other AI factions. You can decide which one you want to do, and it will improve the relationship between you and the target faction. So that's pretty much our mechanic. Our first goal is to tackle this small little army in front of us, belonging to the Cross Club Ogre Kingdoms. Pretty easy. We get a hero, a hunter. There are actually 3 hero classes for the Ogre Kingdom, and we'll take a look at some of them. So another unique thing about Ogre Kingdoms is that their buildings all max out at tier 3. But their camps go to tier 5. So you're not going to gain access to a lot of units on your regular settlements. So camps are very important, and camp placement is also very important. Because once you place a camp somewhere, it cannot move. So if you invest a lot of buildings in it, and you have a limited number of camp slots available to you, and you want to move that camp, you have to wreck all the buildings essentially, destroy the camp or set it up again, and then move it somewhere closer to enemy territory, because camps also automatically raid in the territory if it doesn't belong to you. So that's a source of income, and you can recruit units from having camps in a territory. It counts as having sort of a settlement there. So it's very useful when you're moving out against key targets, especially, let's say I never want to take over Grand Cathay's land. I can set up a camp on their territory. I'll never take that territory, but I'll raid it, and I'll have a defensive outpost, and I will gain income from that. So that's a clever way of using it. And for factions that are not at war with you, sometimes they're not going to mind having a camp on their territory, because other factions, if they're not in a war with you, can walk up to a camp and recruit mercenary ogre units. You can do this with Ogre Kingdom AI camps as well. So it's a nice little place where you can spend some money and grab yourself some ogres. So with all that said, aside from meat, which we already kind of took a look at in terms of how to gain it and how to utilize it, we're just going to quickly delegate this fight. It's not really worth showing. The only cool unit we start out with is the Stonehorn, which is a single entity giant. There is so much variety to the roster, and we only end up with some monstrous infantry. All the ogres are monstrous units, and nobblers. It's just really not worth showing. What I do want to show is that we can eat before battle, a pre-battle feast, and you can eat up to 5. And what you do with the extra meat is you gain 2% speed, 2% mass, and 2% charge bonus for each meat that you give your unit. So that's another usage of the meat. We're not going to use any here. We're kind of stingy with our meat, and we're just going to delegate this fight because we're not really up against anything great here. And we gain some experience, we gain some meat by default, and with the captives, we can ransom them for money, we can process them to store them as meat for future consumption, or we can eat them now and gain replenishment. So I'm gonna process the prisoners. We do gain rank, which is very nice. I do want to actually show off some of the skills and show off big name, because by delegating we actually finish a couple things. We got the hero. I guess we can take a look at the hero first as well. So the hero is a hunter. We can increase mobility of armies we are in. If we stand on the field, we stimulate growth. We can assault garrisons, basically damage enemy garrisons. This is quite useful. This is actually one of my favorite abilities for heroes to do. So this is quite key to level up. Perhaps keep your hunters on the field. You can also assassinate enemy heroes as well as assault enemy units. So this combination is just really lovely, and that really depends on how you want to build out your character with the skill tree choices, because you can have them as an embedded build or as sort of an agent on the field. Let's just do this for the mission.
I'll find the shortcut.
And if you notice when we showcase the buildings, because we're limited to level 3, hunters are actually pretty easy to get, because we can build the Mornfang enclosure and pick up extra hunter capacity. But if you notice, there's no other agent here. So we'll figure that out once we see the camp. Alright, so we did that. We did all the fancy stuff. I'm not going to care too much about actually building things out. We're going to pop over here to tech, because the first tech here, Camp Huddle, will give us 1 camp limit, as well as an army ability. That's pretty good actually. And we'll get 1+ population for all newly deployed camps. So that's also going to be pretty key, because you have to build these up. They're tier 5, but the settlement population requirement is ridiculously high. I think the tier 5 requires 20 population, and that's just kind of insane. But there are a lot of ways you can help it gain growth. So it does make sense, and it does make you think twice before moving camp, because the opportunity cost there is pretty massive. And if you're curious, most of the key tech that's kind of splitting the middle here are ones that are going to give you extra camp limit. So there's ready 4 there, and that's 5, and I think there is 1 more, yeah, in the back here. So you can have up to 6 camp from your tech tree. There are 52 tech in total. Eventually there will be a separate tech tree guide for ogres. It's just hard to do all the tech tree right now. Kislev's tech tree guide is coming very soon, because that one was requested, and eventually we'll cover this as well. But there's 6 from the tech tree, and for Greasus, who we just leveled up from that delegate fight, and if we look at the traits here, we'll focus on the first 2 roles, as those tend to be the sort of unique one for each legendary lord. Belor, we get 20% leadership aurora. Our nobblers get sword. Now remember, we are on this little cart pushed by nobblers all around, which is why if we give those nobblers swords, we gain melee attack. Basically, those guys who are pushing our little cart will hit back with swords. We can have lookouts on them, giving us missile resistant. We can have really lucky nobblers, and we get 5% physical resistance. We can grease them up for 10% extra speed. They're essentially wheels here. And then sneaky nobblers, which will give us vanguard deployment. And then we're also blessed by the Great Maul for 10% spell resistance, bigger and stronger, 8% extra weapon strength for the ogre bows. I can't say that word. Bowls. There we go. We got this. 8% for ogre bows units, and +5 camp growth for all camp. Very crucial. We're getting to camping. Better camping, meat provided by camp +50%, and the best camping +1 extra camp. So we can end up with 7 camps, and that's pretty nice, because camp have very important buildings. Aside from that, we have Tribestealer, another 30 points of diplomatic relationship with all ogre kingdoms. This feels pretty good, but I'm also going to show you a different building, a landmark building of ours, that actually delete some of this diplomatic relations, which is fine actually, because with this we're up to 50 points, melee attack against Ogre Kingdom +10, and weapon strength against Ogre Kingdoms +20%. So you can see this is kind of double-sided. We improve our relationship, but we can also steal their camp by fighting them. Drake Crush, increased bonus against large. also great against Ogre Kingdoms because everyone's large except for the Nobblers. Gold Tooth, increased armor by 8 points for everyone in the army, and +4 leadership. Finally, Over Tyrant, 5% replenishment, +1 rank for all units, and +1 local recruitment capacity. And these are sort of the unique ones for Greasus here. We also have big names, which we actually unlocked 2 of the requirements. You guys didn't get to see it. That's fine. They're very simple stuff like win a siege battle, rank up while you're in a raiding stance. I think I actually don't want to guess what their requirement is, but because we can actually look it up, I think. If we just pop over here to events, there should be... Huh. I thought I saw the message. Ah, there we go. It does not tell us how we did it. But we did it with that battle. That much I know. And you can pick them. So let's say I want +5 melee defense and 30% more mass. Or if I want Horde Master, which will give me basically a leadership aurora when our leadership is higher than broken. So I pick this one. No consequence, because in 10 turns I can pick a different one. And every lord's going to have a different selection. So it's not going to be always, you know, shockingly obese, Gatecrusher, Trait Lord, and Horde Masters. And if you thought only lords get them, heroes also get them. As long as you're ogre, you can have big names. We do have quests and quest battles. Rank 7 will just get the scepter for free, -5% upkeep, increased 10% post-battle loot, -10% recruitment costs, all great things. +4 point bonus against infantry. And we get the Scepter of Titan ability, which is an active sort of buff where we gain 75% extra armor piercing damage and 24 points against large. And that will last us 21 seconds with a 120-second cooldown, so we can use it multiple times in battle. And at rank 10, we'll get a quest battle for the Over Tyrant's Crown. And this will give us 10% additional allegiance points. These are the points you gain to spend on, you know, coordinating targets, borrowing armies, getting units from your allies. And you can passively gain this every turn, and this will just give you a 10% boost for alliances with other ogre kingdoms. +3 points of control in all provinces, +3 points of melee defense for yourself, 10% physical resistance, and a passive ability that gives you 5% damage resistance for an area boost. Actually, this one is going to be infinite passive ability, 35 meters. As long as you stay around the Over Tyrant Greasus, your units will enjoy 5% damage resistance and immune to psychology, which is actually quite good. And that's going to be Greasus here. Oh, before we pop that out, let's also take a look at the Hunter. They also get big names. You can see Elf Butcher, Gut Crusher, win a battle against the elves, win a battle with 2,500 kill. Wow, that one's going to be hard. And we get Cause Terror. Win 5 battles, win a battle against the vampires, stay deader. And you can see the bonuses are pretty fun, but nothing too serious. And everyone's going to have their unique selection to work with. Alrighty, so with that done, I'm just going to move us up. We will... I think we did get that started, did we not? Yes, that's key. We have to get this started. That will give us the camp. And we'll pop a few units. And I guess we will play a little bit. We don't need this building because, as I said, we have a nice landmark building, the Go-To Tollgate, giving us 600 income, -10 points of diplomatic relations with other ogre kingdoms, and 25% increased income from trade, boosting our faction-wide to 50%. So very, very good. Our unique resource here is the gold mine pit, just a lot of cash. And getting rid of that. In terms of infrastructure, just so that we take a look, we have a growth option 1, we have an income option 1, we have a meat option 1 for all local armies in this area, but we will lose income from all buildings in local region, and we have a corruption reducing 1, so Fire Shrine here. Alrighty, let's, did I not assign a point? Okay, I guess we'll take the Tribestealer. Now, despite having 50 points of diplomatic relations, if we try to do any sort of diplomacy with the 3 ogre tribes that's nearby, none of them want to do any sort of deal. No trade, no nothing, which is a bit sad, which makes me feel like we should just kill them. Anyhow, let's end turn. recruited 2 units. They want us to occupy Grimtop. There is no army in it right now. You could technically just go siege it. There's definitely a garrison. I don't know how this delegate actually plays out. Not well. So we'll just encircle for now. Oh, we should have upgraded. And we're going to go for the gold mine and wait for our tech. Wonder if they will attack us during the end turn. Nope. So bad luck to them. They can't do anything in terms of recruitment. Does it get any better? It does not get any better. We're not auto-resolving. We're just going to continue to circle. They took attrition. We're getting our camp next turn, so let's get this going. Even if we can't take it out, I'm just going to build the camp right here. And we have our tech, and our camp limit goes up to 1.
Greasus
So
always wins.
I'm gonna just break because I don't even want to take it because that will take away all my movement and I can't build my camp. You cannot build your camp inside the enemy circle of control for their settlement. That's just too broken. But we can build it if we leave it. There we go. And that's our camp. The unit, the army does not get consumed. You're just placing it and there's a separate camp and there's a separate army. So if we click on the camp here, you can see this is a 10 slot camp. And that's because we have a ton of buildings in here. So 5 levels, as I mentioned, takes a lot of population surplus to build. So you want to think twice if you want to move this thing. We get upkeep discounts, we get camp growth, we get income from all non-camp buildings faction-wide. So camp is very valuable. Then all the military buildings right here, and you can see we get Firebelly, which is another hero of ours. And here's another hunter slot. And finally, over here, we have the butcher slots and a bunch of infrastructure building as well. And now that we have showcased the camp, that's going to wrap it up for our faction preview for Greasus. Remember, the unit roster overview for the Ogre Kingdoms will come out later today, and the Scrag faction preview will be tomorrow. So hopefully you all enjoy this video enough to drop a like, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!